Good evening to you. I'm Danilo Evangelista, and welcome to our Tropical Weather Outlook video for today, Thursday, June 26, 2025. Let's start off with the National Hurricane Center homepage to see what is going on in the tropics and in the Atlantic. Nothing is expected over the next 7 days after we had Arlene earlier this week. Not Arlene, Andrea. I'm getting some names confused, but we had Andrea earlier this week, but nothing on the tropical weather bulletin for right now. We do have something in the Eastern Pacific, Invest 95E, and this is very likely to become a tropical storm, our next tropical storm in the Eastern Pacific over the next several days as this develops off the southern coast of Mexico. The National Hurricane Center gives this a 80% chance of development within the next 7 days. And they say showers and thunderstorms associated with a broad area of low pressure located a few hundred miles southwest of the coast of Guatemala is beginning to show some signs of organization. Environmental conditions are expected to become more conducive for development during the next few days, and the tropical depression is likely to form late this weekend while the system moves slowly west-northwestward off the southern coast of Mexico. Let's really quickly take a look at a satellite image of what is going on in the general Atlantic basin, and then I'll zoom in on Invest 95E in a moment. But right now across the tropics, not much happening, obviously, very dry. You can even see by a bunch of these low-level clouds, there's a lot of dry air, especially caused by the Saharan air layer, which is very prevalent in the eastern Atlantic. Very typical for this time of year, especially late June, and I've been saying it, and I will continue to say it. And believe me, I'm saying it that it's typical for this time of the year because, especially once we get to August and this Saharan air will clear out substantially, or presumably it will, you will start to see the deep tropics become a lot more active, or I think it will, but it probably will. And so all the hype that you see right now about the Saharan air layer and how that might keep a dim on the season, I'm here to tell you, no, it doesn't really matter. In most cases, some cases maybe it does matter, but it's still typical anyway, so I wouldn't worry about it having an overall impact of the season. But for now, obviously, it does have a short-term impact, which is once again typical of this time of year, and that's that we don't get any sort of really development going on. And you could also see as well very strong upper level winds across the deep tropics. So nothing substantial in the Atlantic. You have to go further west into the Caribbean where there is a lot of convective activity. Lots of shower and thunderstorm activity over the U.S. today. You can see a frontal system over the high plains in the Midwest, especially over Iowa. I think there is some severe weather expected for them today. And then we get on into the Eastern Pacific, and you can see on this satellite view, Invest 95E. And now let's actually zoom in on Invest 95E, and you can see showers of thunderstorm activity associated with it. Obviously not very organized right now. And it's probably going to take a little bit of time to organize over the next few days. You can see, especially by these fast-moving clouds here, those are probably those seem like outflow boundaries. So maybe this is dealing a little bit with dry air. And I think honestly looks like there's a little bit of shear impacting it. So it will take a few days to develop, but Invest 95E will probably develop within the next few days. The National Hurricane Center says by the end of the weekend, so I guess I'll trust their judgment on that. And once it develops, taking a look at the model track guidance, it's very likely to stay off the coast of Mexico, which is obviously the biggest thing related to it, because especially with Mexico, we just dealt with Hurricane Eric not long ago, so obviously you would not want another impactful storm. So at least in terms of impacts to Mexico with 95E, this will probably stay off the coast, which is a good thing. And then this generally tracks to the northwest and west-northwest and stays off the coast of Mexico over the next few days. And intensity-wise, most of the model guidance has this remaining a tropical storm. A few models indicate that this might become strong enough and maybe get to hurricane status. The HWRF shows it, and I think even the GFS does. But overall, the model intensity guidance kind of staying steady at tropical storm force status. So either way, I would say that no matter what, this will at least be more likely than not to become our next tropical storm in the Eastern Pacific, which would be Flossie. And it would be probably, if it does form in time enough, especially by the end of the weekend, it'll probably be the earliest we've gotten the 6th named storm in the Eastern Pacific on record. Just a testament to how active things have been over the past several weeks in the Pacific. So let's take a look at the model guidance. I'm going to show you the European today because I usually show the GFS. And so we really don't give the European enough love. So I thought I'd show it to you guys today. And taking a look at here on the European over the next several days, you can see here how Invest 95L or 95L, 95E, since we're talking about the Eastern Pacific, takes a few days to develop, really does start to get its act together on Sunday, so towards the end of this week, off the southwest coast of Mexico. Then it moves parallel to the coast, and then eventually, once we get towards the week time frame, the 7-day time frame, it does actually continue it on its west-northwest track enough that the European, at least, once it gets towards the 7-day time frame, does actually bring it close to the Baja Peninsula of Mexico. So if there is any place in Mexico that might get impacted from 95E, besides maybe getting some brief showers and high surf along the general Mexican coast, maybe in the longer range, we'll have to watch the Baja Peninsula to see if 95E does indeed track towards the coast. So that might be something interesting to watch in terms of actual land impacts. And then really quickly in the Atlantic, just want to go over what is expected in the Atlantic over the next 7 days. Not much, except let me really quickly back it up here to the general next 5 to 7 days. And you do see, and this is a very interesting feature, and I've seen not a lot of people talk about it, but did see this in the Bay of Campeche, a little bit of vorticity that does try to consolidate before it heads inland into Mexico on the Atlantic side of things. And we've had a few storms over the last several years which were quick spin-ups in the Gulf of Mexico, especially last year. Early on in the season, we had quite a few storms. So we'll see if maybe this is something that actually does try to consolidate. I mean, it does look very interesting, but doesn't really have that much time, and it is a very weak low pressure that does try to consolidate as it heads into Mexico. But sometimes it's these small little low pressures that develop and catch everybody off by surprise. So just a quick little interesting thing that I saw on the European. But beyond that, over the next 7 days, not much else really going on in the Atlantic. Things remain nice and quiet. Most of the activity remains to be watched in the Eastern Pacific. But really quickly, taking a longer range look, so looking at the general pattern over a longer period of time, looking out to July, I'm showing you here the velocity potential map. This is by the CFS, and unfortunately the top portion of the graphic where the name is cut off, and I really don't know why that's the case. But this is the CFS velocity potential for July, and I did talk about this on Twitter last night, how this is, by the way, if you don't know what this GIF is, it's a GIF, right? I guess that's how you call it, a GIF. This GIF animation is representing the most recent 10 model runs of the CFS velocity potential map for July. And a very interesting trend that I'm noticing is, look over here over Africa. We're starting to get, over the last several model runs, a lot more of a signal for a bunch of these greens showing up over Africa, which means that there's a lot more rising motion in place. And that's important because if you look here in the Atlantic, overall, it looks very unfavorable, at least velocity potential wise, because velocity potential generally corresponds with the MJO, and that means, what areas in the atmosphere in the entire world have the most favorability for rising motion and thunderstorm activity, and obviously The oranges and browns represent sinking motion, and that would represent not favorable conditions for rising air and potential thunderstorm activity, and of course, subsequently, tropical cyclone formation. And we have a lot of sinking air in the Atlantic in July. But it's very interesting how the sinking air kind of shrinks a little bit, and slowly over the last several model runs, we're starting to get more and more rising air chip away at this sinking cell in the Atlantic and start to encompass a lot more of Africa. So instead of just having completely dry conditions in the Atlantic with maybe not even a lot of rising motion over Africa, meaning very dry Atlantic and maybe not even a bunch of strong tropical waves coming off of Africa, maybe we're starting to see a little bit of a pattern shift, and the models are starting to pick up on not as unfavorable as a pattern for July, especially when it comes to deep tropical development, because for storms like Andrea, which formed in the subtropics, those will happen no matter what the atmospheric pattern is. It really just comes down to whether or not conditions are favorable in the immediate area for the next 24 to 48 hours, and that's literally how Andrea was able to happen. But in terms of especially deep tropical development from tropical waves, especially in the eastern Atlantic, this is a very, very interesting thing for me to see in the models, and especially that we're only a few days away from July, and we're starting to see this uptrend in the models towards maybe more of a favorable pattern, especially over Africa. So maybe we might get stronger tropical waves. I'm questioning maybe if the pattern is changing a little bit for July, and maybe will we finally get the opportunity for things to become a little bit more active in the Atlantic basin as we head into the month of July, especially more active compared to how inactive the tropical Atlantic, which, I mean, we're typically not that active in the month of June, but it's really been not active at all. Andrea was our one lucky storm that was able to spin up and give us a quick little surprise, to give us a start to this hurricane season. So we'll see how the pattern changes as we head into July. But for now, at least in the Atlantic, things remaining quiet for the foreseeable future, at least over the next week or so. Obviously, we could have another quick spin up. We'll see, but more likely than not, things will remain quiet over the next week. Watching the Pacific once again with Invest 95E. With that being said, though, not much else to go over for today's video, so I'm going to end it off here. If you enjoy what you saw today, I would really appreciate if you like, comment, subscribe, and especially share this video with family and friends and people that might be interested in this kind of content. And if you are interested in this content yourself, I would really appreciate, especially if you subscribe and make sure to turn on the notification bell so you can get videos the moment I upload them. Thanks for watching. Stay safe. Enjoy the rest of your day. Peace, love, and kindness to you all. I will be back here tomorrow.